Hi, this is Dandy Taylor. I am here to do my demo for the advanced database class. So this semester, the assignment was to create a room scheduling application. And so to do that, I've created this new application called Roomy. I'm going to go ahead and log in so that I can give you a little bit of an overview. Because when you log in, it actually tells you what this is about. So Roomy, it's a web-based room reservation system. It's specifically to be able to register to reserve a room for a class or a study group or whatever event or activity that you've got going on. The critical features are being able to add locations, which are the rooms that you might manage, making reservations if you have an event, registering for an event if you see one that you like, or seeing who's registered for events, and then being able to manage users and if you're an administrator, and then for everybody being able to get and receive messages within the system. So right now I'm logged in. I'm logged in as an administrator, and so you can see here up on the upper left hand side, these are the things items I can choose from to manage it or to use the system. Over on the right hand side, you can see that I can actually manage my profile, or I can log out. So we're going to start with the events. On this page, it basically displays all the events for this particular user. Because I'm logged in as an administrator, it actually shows me all events. So you can see here that I've got one event that I organized. It's a study group for computer science. Tony Stark also organized something. He organized a party, even though he called it a class, and gave it a little bit of description. Right now, as well, you can see that there's a capacity for the event, so I only have 10 available slots for this particular study group, but 2 people have already signed up, and we'll see that in a minute. From here, I can edit or I can delete these items as needed. The next area is the locations. So with locations, same kind of thing. I can go in and add a location as an individual owns some place that I'm letting people hold events. And so in my particular case, I've set up a location for my work office and my home office. It tells you what the room number is and everything else. You can also edit or delete those or add a new one on this page. For reservations, these, again, because I'm the admin, I'm going to see all reservations. Normally, which we'll look at here in just a minute, you'll see that a regular user only sees the reservations that they've made. But what this tells me is that for my CS study class, the location has been reserved as the work office, and when it's going to start and when it's going to end. Again, also, it gives me a number of the registered attendees so far, so that I can keep track of how I'm doing there, whether I'm going to get too many people or whether we can downsize to a different room. Likewise, we can see that Tony, his is scheduled for my home office for some reason. So, and you can, again, edit and delete and add new reservations. The next one is the registrations. And again, because I'm an administrator here, I'm seeing all reservations. This isn't the prettiest screen. It needs to be cleaned up a little bit, but you can see here that I have, I was saying that there's 2 people registered for the CS study group. That's Clark Kent and Matt Murdoch. You can also see that I'm the organizer. For Tony's party, he has a lot more people. He basically has everybody in the system at this point, including himself. So, but again, it just tells you who the people are and when the event is happening, and you can edit and delete those registrations. The next section is the messages section. So this is specifically to get messages to you. So in my case, as I'm logged in, I've actually received 2 messages. One from Clark Kent about lunch today or yesterday. He said he was buying. It didn't end up going, but the other one is from Iron Man. That's Tony Stark. this is the notification of his party that he's going to have be celebrating the new year for this party, and when those emails came in. So again, you can manage those emails or these messages by deleting them here, or you can add a new one. The final one is, again, because I'm an administrator, I have the ability to look at and review the users of the system. So in this case, I have a list of all of the users. Now, a normal user isn't going to be able to see this tab at all. But I can see all the users. I can go ahead and add a new user. I can edit a user. So say we need to edit Bruce Wayne. I can come here and see Bruce Wayne's stuff and edit his data. I can also delete somebody. So for instance, if Peter Parker, we decide that he doesn't belong in the system or whatever, I can delete him and he is now gone from the system. You can see that because if I go back over to registrations, Peter was registered for the party prior to this. Peter's no longer there. If I look at the actual events, you can see that Tony Stark, his party attendees, is now down to 9, and that's because we removed Peter from the system. And then again, I can edit or delete things here, but I can also go in and edit my profile. So this is my profile address and everything else, and I can edit that and save those changes or cancel it. But let's go ahead and we're going to log back out, and I'm going to log in as Tony. And Tony, again, he's going to see the same home page. If you look at Tony's events, he only sees the one. He doesn't get to see mine as Dandy Taylor because he doesn't get to manage that. I was seeing both his and mine because I was an administrator. He can only see his, but he can see who's attending and how big it is. He doesn't have any locations himself. He's actually using a location that I put in there for his party, so that's why I said it's a little weird he's holding it at my house. But you can go in and see his reservations that he's made. That happens to be my home office, and how many registered attendees he has, just like we were saying. We can look at registrations. Because Tony's not an administrator, he actually only sees the registrations that he's made. So the only things that he's registered for. That's actually why I had him register for his own party. But again, he can edit and delete his reservations. He can add a reservation, but it's specific to him. And then finally, you can see messages. Now, because he sent a message out to everybody else and nobody sent Tony a message, he doesn't have any messages here. If we were to go in and look at somebody else, then you would see just one message from them. So you'll also notice here that there is no users. And that's because Tony, again, is not an administrator, so he can't edit anybody else. He can only manage his own stuff, and that's as designed. So I do want to flip over and look a little bit at the code. So in particular, this is the current layout of the code. You can see here that this is all of the public address or public files that are actually hit from the URLs. And then I've got it split up into some include files, which are sort of like utilities that are going to be doing certain things, like they're requiring that the user is an admin, or requiring that they've logged in on, showing errors if I want to show errors on the page, that kind of thing. And then I've also split up the actual data stuff, and this is the part I wanted to show, into a set of repositories. And so when I go in and say something like, I want to get, let's do the reservation. I want to show the reservation, so what I'm going to do is come in here to the page, and here on line 9, I'm going to actually call the reservation repository. And that way, my code here that is publicly facing to the internet isn't actually doing any calls to the database itself. I've separated that out into more of a, not quite MVC, but more of a 3-tier type scenario. And so if we then go look at the reservations repository, you can see that I have a get reservation function that's going to take a user ID and a reservation ID. And then it's going to, based on that, go and call a certain query in the database. In our particular case, this query is actually of interest because on the reservations, remember, we're getting, if I flip over here, we're not just getting the reservation, but we're also getting the registered attendees. And so what this query is actually doing is it's getting all of reservation information, the event, the location, and the user, but it's also going out and looking at the reservation attendees, and it's getting a count of all of the people that have signed up. And then it's left joining that in and returning that as the registered attendees count. And that's how we're doing that. And so again, this query is actually duplicated here because of the different filters. In the admin case, it doesn't filter anything. For the if there is a user but they don't supply a specific reservation ID, it gets them all of their reservations for that user. If they do both, then they get a specific reservation ID. And then it makes the call and returns it as an array so that we can process over it. So that is really it. There's actually quite a bit of functionality I wasn't able to get implemented yet. A lot of the add events, add location, the new add stuff isn't working right now. The user stuff does work because if I come here and say I'm a new user, I can go in here and register. And so I can add a new user here. And so let's just say that we're going to add Jim at test.com as a test thing. We're just going to give his password as Jim, and we click enter, and so now I have Jim. And then I can go out ahead and fill out Jim's information. We're going to skip by that real quick, and we're going to see that now Jim can see everything in the system that he needs to. He just doesn't have anything because he's just not there. So if I come log back out and log in as myself, then I can go in and see that we now have Jim, and I can edit Jim if I want to. So that's the application that I've got, and sort of how it's set up. Again, it is in Google App Engine, and so that took a little bit. That was a little bit of a learning curve that I needed to overcome. In particular, with the way I was trying to route and do the handlers. Initially, I had a handler for each separate one of those areas, whether reservations or registrations or messages and that. And I needed to figure out how to do this in a different way. And even then, I would still go further, and I need to go further, where right now each of these is handling its own calls, is handling its own requests. And I really should have in front of all of these a router, basically, that takes all of the requests and then routes it appropriately. You can see as I log in that that for like the users, I'm actually using a RESTful scenario, so I can actually edit a user. No, that didn't give me the right one. Oh, it's profile edit, that's why. So I can actually go in and edit based on that regular RESTful type URL. And so I would need to implement a better handler to handle that kind of scenario. So, but all in all, it's there, and I was able to get quite a few repository items and do some more advanced querying where I'm doing some group bys and things like that. I also needed to create a stored procedure, which I'll open here real quick. In order for this to work, I needed to create a couple stored procedures where the first of which was that I needed to be able to delete locations. So if somebody wants to come in and say, oh, I don't want that location to be available anymore, I need to delete it. And so I created a procedure that would allow them to give me a location ID. It would come in here and it would actually be safe in that if there was any error, it would actually roll back the transaction. But otherwise, it starts the transaction and it deletes from a bunch of different places anywhere there might be a location. So if somebody has a reservation on a location, it will delete that. And then the other part of that is that we need to be able to delete user. And again, another procedure to do that, you give it the user ID, and it's going to do the same thing where it's going to exit cleanly. So if there's an error in the process of deleting a user, it will actually roll back all the transaction. But in this particular case, if you delete a user, you need to delete all of the events that they've done, all of their reservations that they've created, but also any locations that they have created, and any reservations or events tied to that location. And so in this particular case, I had to actually write a cursor as well, where you can see I've deleted from the reservation an event and the rating and things like that. And then here I'm actually looping through that cursor and deleting each location for that user. And so so that is it. There's still, it would be a lot more work to make this actually a usable system. But all in all, it's somewhat functional and it's starting to really come together. And so that is my project. Again, this is Dan D. Taylor, and project is for CPSC 551, the Advanced Database course for fall of 2008. So I want to thank you and hope you enjoy your day.